If you want triceps that are so goddamn meaty that people accuse you of taking steroids, then keep on listening, because this will be the last triceps training video that you will ever have to watch, as I will go over the 3 absolute best exercises for the triceps, which you can abuse for the rest of your goddamn life, a full blueprint on how to program for maximum possible muscle growth, and a free program at the end of the video, so you can apply all of this info right away and thank me later for your new meaty ass triceps, okay? So there are 2 main criteria that I based my exercise selection on for the most efficient and also effective muscle growth possible. The first one being which joint function the triceps performs, and second being where within that joint function the triceps has the best leverage to produce force and will therefore get the best possible stimulus. The long head of the triceps, which gives you that meaty goddamn look, gets trained the best with pure elbow extension with your arm fixed beside your body. The desired resistance profile, essentially where the exercise is the hardest, should be at 90 degrees of elbow extension, right in the middle of the movement. Any push-down variation will do, but the 2 absolute best exercises are the single arm push-down, being the absolute goat of tricep exercises. To make the exercise even more effective, try to use a cuff at your wrist, as you don't need your wrist to train your triceps effectively, but taking out the wrist gives you more stability and more grindability. But try to still attach and or just hold a D handle to create intramuscular stability and more comfort for your elbows. You can also loop around a resistance band, a seat belt, or just a normal ass jeans belt around your arms for even more stability, as you can see right here. This is optional, but it will allow you to keep the motion more strict without your arms moving forward because you're cheating the movement, which is very important as I said, you want to keep your arms fixed very tightly beside your body and focus on pure elbow extension to bias long end of the triceps maximally. I will go into a bit more detail, the scientific reasons of why the single arm pushdown is the most absolute goated tricep exercise there is. But if you don't wanna perform a single arm pushdown due to time constraints or because you simply don't wanna, then the incline pushdown is the second best option, as it's way more stable than a standing pushdown, which will maximize motor unit improvement and therefore the stimulus you will get out of the exercise. Any pushdown variation slightly biases the distal region of the triceps, meaning the lower portion of it, compared to the next exercise that I will show you, which slightly biases that upper proximal region of the long head of the triceps. The long head doesn't just perform elbow extension, but also shoulder extension in the sagittal plane, as it crosses both the elbow and the shoulder joint. And within shoulder extension, the long head of the triceps has the best leverage to produce force above 90 degrees in an overhead position, meaning that any free weight pullover variation with a descending resistance profile or a top half machine pullover is the absolute best exercise to hit the proximal region of the long head of the triceps. But keep in mind that you can only slightly bias each region of the long head, but that isn't a big bummer, because if you want the meatiest goddamn triceps possible, just do both of these and you'll be good. Coming to the lateral and medial head of the triceps, which gives you that croissant look, you can hit this part of the triceps the best with elbow extension while having a moving arm, as the long head of the triceps again crosses both the shoulder and elbow joint, and when you move your arm while extending your elbow, you shorten the triceps on the elbow joint, while it lengthens at the shoulder joint, meaning that the relative length of the triceps stays the same, meaning again that it has no real power output, as this simply disadvantages the long head of the triceps from doing the work, shifting more of the focus to the lateral and medial head. The absolute best exercise for the lateral and medial head are jam press variations, like with a reverse banded Smith machine, as the lateral and medial head has the best leverage to produce force in that shortened position, meaning that you want the resistance profile to be extending, which you achieve with the reverse band, as this overloads the top while taking tension off the bottom. For the setup, simply use a daisy chain or loop strap, a hook, and of course a resistance band. Another more comfortable variation to set up is performing a jam press on a chest press machine, especially if that machine has an ascending resistance profile, meaning that it is the hardest in that top portion. Set the seat down low so that the handles and your hands, therefore, are at shoulder level. Tuck the elbows in and focus on pressing purely with your triceps. And if the machine isn't the hardest at lockout, you can just use a resistance band and loop it around the seat and the handles, and you can modify the resistance profile just like in the Smith machine that way. Another solid variation for the lateral and medial head is an overhead extension, as your long head loses leverage to produce force when your arm is not in your anatomical arm position, meaning when it's not beside your body. And as you can imagine, when your arm is overhead, your arm is the furthest away from that anatomical arm position, meaning that you can disadvantage the long head of the triceps as much as possible that way, which gives you more lateral medial head stimulus. A quick disclaimer, you still get some long head activation and therefore stimulus when you do an overextension, but it is very tiny compared to a push-down variation, but you still get some if you do this one thing, which is simply if your arm stays in this fixed overhead position and you just focus on extending your elbow. If you move your arm while extending your elbow, that's even further disadvantages the long head or triceps from doing the work, just like in the jam press variation. So if you still want to get some tiny biscuit-sized stimulus for the long head through all exercises, and especially this overhead extension one, keep your elbow, or no, your arm in this fixed position, okay? But again, it is primarily a lateral and medial head exercise, no matter what anybody tells you. And let me play the appeal to authority card, as I've always done long head overhead extensions in the past, and my long head was good, but ever since I put all my goddamn focus on just push downs, brother, my goddamn long head blew the fuck up, okay? To keep your arms in a fixed position and also save your elbow joint in the long run, make sure to either choose a Vulcan strap or a dual long rope to perform the overhead extension instead of actual bar. And if you want to lateral and medial head max your physique, make sure to use a single arm cuffed overhead extension, because unilateral training is absolutely OP if you want to bring up a specific muscle group or muscle region, because your triceps suffers from the bilateral force deficit, which in simple terms means that if you perform an exercise with just one arm at a time, you get much more motor unit recruitment to that one side of the arm and therefore more stimulus, because your brain can focus more of its energy to that one side of the arm instead of distributing that energy and that focus to both sides of the arm. By the way, if you're interested to getting your physique to the next level in the most efficient and effective way possible, make sure to check out my one-to-one online coaching service and watch this video right here for further information about the coaching, or check out my programs where you get 5 to 6 different programs for the price of one. The links for both are in the description and comments down below. Enough of capitalism, let's continue with the video, okay? Let's come to the most crucial part of this whole video. Knowing which exercises to hit the long head, to hit the triceps is fucking exciting, but if you don't know how to program these exercises in the most efficient and effective way possible, your triceps will suck till eternity, okay? So let's get straight to it. The absolute most effective way to train via the recent scientific studies and also what I've observed from my own experience and with the people I've worked with is high frequency training. Just look at the huge difference in the amount of chances you get to grow your triceps when you compare a 1 time per week frequency all the way up to a 3 times per week frequency. But that's not the only benefit. You also benefit much more often of the first 1 to 3 simulating sets, and especially that first simulating set, which gives you the biggest stimulus of the whole workout. You can stay within the productive zone of sets within a workout without accumulating any junk volume, without accumulating any junk fatigue, getting the most effective stimulus in and getting the fuck out. You also reduce the amount of time you spend in muscle atrophy. You can imagine that if you perform a workout, you have a slight bump in muscle growth occurring, but that muscle growth that you have created within that workout declines over the next few days. When you look at the 1 time per week frequency, you can see that no matter how many sets you perform, the growth stimulus goes completely away after 1 week of rest. But if you repeat that stimulus 2 or even 3 times per week, you're essentially canceling out your body's mechanism of muscle atrophy, meaning that you're almost always in a growth state, just like someone who is using anabolic steroids. Sticking with the right volume guidelines while training for high frequency is pretty fucking important, as you don't want to overdo the volume part, as you won't recover to the next session due to training so often within a week. And if you don't recover to the next session, you won't see any progressive overload occurring, and therefore not any muscle growth occurring. If you train 3 times per week, like in a full body split, you can perform 1 to 3 sets for the triceps within a session. If you were to train 2 times per week, like in an upper-lower split or a push-pull full body split, you can perform 2 to 5 sets for the triceps within a session. But don't simply think that doing more volume for the triceps is always better. It is up to a certain extent, but you need to know that the triceps has a very low recovery rate due to a high voluntary activation level, meaning that relatively lower volumes within this volume zone is for the vast majority better. So my recommendation is that you start at the lower end of the volume recommendations that I gave you. Do that for 1 to 2 weeks. Then you can add another set just one set, okay? See how you progress over the next 1 to 2 weeks. Then you can add another set and so on until you reach that peak of the volume recommendation that I gave you. And once you notice that your progress stagnates or even regresses, you know that you're doing too much and you have to reduce the volume again. Just removing that one set that you added the last week will do a ton, okay? Just see how your progress goes and adjust accordingly. So for absolute maximum possible triceps growth, you want to perform one exercise per muscle function. So we have the push down variation, we have the pullover variation, and we have some lateral or medial head triceps variation with either a jam press or an overhead extension. And you want to perform all of these exercises at the very start of every single workout that you do for maximum possible triceps growth. As when you start the workout, you are in a fresh state, meaning that you have maximum possible motor unit improvement, which will get you the maximum possible stimulus that you could ever get. And additionally, you want to perform the same exercise in every single workout that you do. It doesn't matter if you train 2 times per week, 3 times per week, repeat the same exercise in every single workout without changing anything, okay? And that is because of muscle regional hypertrophy. Let's say in session 1, you perform a push-down variation, where you bias the long head of the triceps, and in session 2, you perform a jam press variation, where your long head of the triceps is shut down and your lateral and medial head perform all of the work. Yes, on paper, you have hit your triceps 2 times per week that way, but your long head of the triceps only got hit 1 time per week, or your lateral and medial head of the triceps got hit 2 times per week. As in the push-down variation, the lateral and medial head are still somewhat worked, even while not biased, but in the jam press variation, the long head is completely shut off. So if you actually want to benefit of the higher frequencies, you want to perform every single muscle function and every single workout without changing the exercise at all, okay? The most common arm training or triceps training misconception is that you want to perform high reps and pump sets without heavy weights but light ones, which is absolute bogus bullshit, okay? Every single muscle acts the same and every single muscle responds the best to very heavy training in the 4 to 8 rep range. And that's because the last 5 reps of a given set gives you the best possible stimulus, while the previous ones don't give you any additional benefit. Meaning that if you perform a 15 rep set, what do the first 10 reps accomplish? Nothing, okay? And if you perform a 4 to 8 rep set, the effective reps start almost immediately from rep 1. So you get to the stimulating reps without any fluff, without any junk volume, and preferably you would want to stick in the 2 to 0 reps in reserve range. I like 0 to 1 better. 2 is a little bit of a pussy training, but this combo of the rep range and the reps in reserve will allow you to get the best possible stimulus and the best stimulus to fatigue ratio, as it will not accumulate any unnecessary junk fatigue, okay? Now let's come to the sample program, where we take all of these programming principles and put it into actual practice, okay? When training 3 times per week with a full body split, which is the absolute best way to train if you want to bring up a specific body part, you would want to perform a single arm pushdown for 1 set, a dumbbell pullover for 1 set, and an overhead extension or jam press for 1 set. When training 2 times per week, like in an upper-lower split or a push-pull full body split, you want to perform a single arm pushdown for 2 sets, a dumbbell pullover for 1 to 2 sets, and an overhead extension or a jam press for 1 to 2 sets. This is the maximum possible work that you can do with both of these training frequencies. If you can't recover from that much volume, or you simply don't have the time or don't want to absolutely maximize and get 100% of triceps growth possible, but like 95, you can just cut off 1 exercise out of these 3 and you'll be fine, okay? If you absolutely want to long head, max your physique, keep the push down and the pullover, and if you want more overall growth, still having a thick ass long head, but getting that croissant look, just cut off the pullover and keep the lateral head exercises. A very, very important disclaimer when you train the triceps with a higher frequency, that most likely also means that you're training your whole body with higher frequency, which I advise you to do, but you need to be aware of your chest recovery and also your pressing volume. A pullover variation also hits a lot of lower chest. A jam press variation is primarily a lateral medial head exercise, but it also hits a little bit of chest and shoulders, and you should be cautious with overall pressing volume, as the lateral and medial head get a lot of work from pressing. So if you do a lot of chest work and a lot of overall pressing work, your triceps recovery and therefore progressive overload, therefore muscle growth, could potentially suffer. So please keep all of these volume recommendation guidelines for this higher frequency also for the pressing and for the chest itself, okay? And also maybe switch to pure isolation work for the chest and shoulders. So instead of chest pressing, do most predominantly flies, and instead of shoulder pressing, do a little bit more of lateral raises. Or simply keep the volume and the presses to a bare minimum that you can tolerate. Or keep on with your pressing volume for the chest and shoulders and reduce the lateral and medial head focus triceps work and focus more on your long head. Your lateral medial head gets hit plenty with your pressing work, and the long head of the triceps is the more important part of the triceps. So you won't miss out that much. But again, just listen to what your recovery says, what your progressive overload says, and adjust accordingly. Now let's come to the absolute most important tip that you will ever hear, okay? Stick to this for 6 to 12 months, get super fucking strong on all of the exercises, and thank me later for your new meaty fucking triceps, okay? By the way, if you're interested to getting your physique to the next level in the most efficient and effective way possible, make sure to check out my one-to-one online coaching service and watch this video right here for further information about the coaching, or check out my programs where you get 5 to 6 different programs for the price of one. The links for both are in the description and comments down below. See you, brother, in the next video.